back to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up. I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher, a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today I'll be doing that just for you. We're going to be talking about body dysmorphia. And this comes from an article I read in the BBC Science magazine on the broken mirror. And it talks about how 20% of the young population today is suffering from body dysmorphia disorder, BDD. And this stems from a contribution or a combination of a whole host of things, in particular social media. And we're going to be talking about what we can do to help the young people today and also to help ourselves, because there'll be something about you that you probably dislike, that you're disowning, that you're not owning. And I want you to love it. I want you to be you and to feel whole as opposed to feeling like something's missing, because that's what happens when we compare ourselves to someone else. And that's essentially the illusion that's formed around body dysmorphia, is that we're comparing ourselves to someone else and we're not loving who we are. And why does this happen? Why do we get this way? Why does the brain distort this and create this crazy illusion about ourselves that we're not complete, that there's something missing, that we're not whole? Well, it's because our brain consists of a animal part of the brain, which is we often refer to as the emotional center or the limbic center. It is our survival center. It is where we essentially, we want to sustain life. We want to stay around. We want to survive. And this is a basic human need. As you've probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have basic human needs to survive. And if those needs aren't fulfilled, we will seek to fulfill those needs. However, most of you that are listening to this podcast have your basic needs met. You have shelter, most likely. I hope so. If you don't, please let me know. You have food, you have water, you have clothing, and you most likely have connection and feel part of something bigger, whether it be through work or through some volunteer organization, but you feel that you're part of a bigger, more meaningful contribution to life. So what happens when we don't have these basic needs met? We go into survival mode, and we can get thrown into survival mode when we compare ourselves to others, when we compare and see in them and we don't see it in us, and we feel that there's a void. We feel like there's something missing. And this happens when we see a tiger, and at the moment we see that tiger, we just distort our brain. Our brain automatically distorts. We have no control over it. It just automatically goes into hyperdrive, thinking, well, if that tiger goes in my direction and sees me as food, then I'm gone. And so our brain straight away creates the worst case scenario, and it really amplifies that worst case scenario. And the reason why it does that is to get you ready, to get you prepared for the worst case scenario. The tiger might not have seen you, or the tiger might have just had a great meal and might not be hungry. So you might not be on the tiger's radar. However, you perceive that because the worst case scenario is that you're dead. Okay. And so this is our survival part of the brain that kicks in. In today's world, we don't typically encounter tigers, yet we do encounter people that may resemble tigers to us, that may be threatening to us, or we have a perception around a threatening to our well-being. And these might be people that have challenged us, or people that have, maybe said nasty things or put you down or continue to put you down, or typically not life-threatening, although it can be, probably in around that 1% of scenarios. However, 99% of the time, it is more these everyday things that we don't like what that person said to us, or we have some resentment towards a person, or we scroll through social media and we see a picture that we have admiration for, but we then look at ourselves and perceive something's missing, that we really don't have that quality, and we think we're not whole. We think there's we're split. We split our perception of ourselves and distort it. The way they look in terms of wow, absolute admiration, and then we distort the other side in terms of how we look, and we look puny or ugly, or we distort the ugly feature about ourselves, and we create this massive void within ourselves, and we have this perception that there's a huge void, and we're not complete, and we essentially have missing parts. And this is incomplete awareness, because we're only seeing one side. We're only seeing one side of that person. We're only admiring one feature about that person. But that person is a whole person. They have two sides of them, and they have things about them that you probably don't want in you, and you actually don't want to be them. But in that point of comparison, you're actually admiring just a part of them that you want, you desire. And that's okay to desire that, provided it's really important to you. Let me rewind back to this distortion of the limbic center, when you're distorting what you're seeing in them and absolutely painting it out as the best thing, and that I just really, really want that, and I don't like what I've got. And so you're admiring a quality in them and disowning a quality in you, and not seeing you as whole. You're seeing something as largely missing and distorting what you have. Well, in actual fact, in reality, you are complete. It's only at the level of the senses that you feel that there's something missing, or you sense that there's something missing. You're perceiving something's missing. It's because you are unaware. You're unconscious of what is actually there, and you're not owning what is an admirational trait in you, and you're distorting the admirational trait in them. I'm going to talk more about this as we go along, but I just wanted to go back to that animal part of the brain where it distorts things and creates illusions, and then separates you. You become parts. You become fragmented into parts, and you don't feel whole or complete. And when you feel dismembered, you feel scattered. You feel down, because you have this perception that something's missing. And that's only at the level of the senses. But at the level of the soul, nothing is missing. The level of our soul, the state of unconditional love, there is nothing missing. It's just because you're admiring a trait in them that you're too humble to own in yourself. And we need to have that recognition that we need to own the traits of the greats, and we need to own the traits of things that we're disowning, essentially, that we're too proud to own in others. So there'll be things that you see in others that you don't like in yourself, and they remind you of something in yourself that you're not loving. And so it creates this incompleteness, or this feeling unwhole, or feeling that there's something missing and that you're not enough. Essentially, you get this sense that you're not enough. And this is what happens with the body dysmorphia disorder, is the person has this ongoing perception that there's something missing. And in actual fact, a lot of the time they have it. They're just not owning it within themselves, and they're distorting what they're seeing in others. So how do we get out of this animal thinking, this animal survival? Because it splits us. And the reason why it splits us is to create a void, so that we actually can get away from that tiger. That if I don't exaggerate this tiger, or the worst case scenario, then I haven't got a chance of getting away from this tiger. And so this is this wanting to avoid the predator. And we also have the other side, which is wanting to gain the prey. So we want to avoid the pain, which is the predator, and we also want to gain the prey. So we distort the prey in terms of something we admire in others. We make it bigger so that we just want to eat it. We really want it. We want to consume it. And this is the animalistic thinking within us. But if we go and transcend that higher levels of thinking, a more balanced perception of the way of seeing things as they are, as opposed to distorting it and seeing it as an illusion, we can do that by looking for what we perceive is missing and bringing it to our conscious awareness. And let me get to some examples. So in this article, they were referring to this girl that saw her, as a moon face with acne, and then she distorted the way she saw herself and exaggerated that moon face and acne, and really hated it and become, to despise that. Well, I want to relate that to a story that I grew up with in terms of my nose. My nose was large, and I got hassled for my nose because it stood out, right? It was a feature that stood out, and people look at, it becomes something that's very noticeable. So these sort of features stand out, and people bring it to your conscious awareness, and you're aware of it too, but you become over conscious about it, about this large nose. And I sort of had this feeling that, oh, I wish I didn't have this large nose and I wouldn't stand out as much. And look at me today. I'm doing all these podcasts all the time. I'm posting lots on social media because I want to stand out, because I'm sharing a message of something that's truly important to me. But back then, this nose feature was something I didn't love. I didn't, I didn't own. And so I used to distort how bad it was and have this body dysmorphia disorder about my nose until I went overseas and I traveled through Asia. And as you know, in Asia, the noses are much smaller. And obviously, when everyone's got the same, people want to stand out. If you value physical appearance, you want to stand out. And I didn't have a value on physical appearance, and hence why my nose, I didn't want to stand out. But these people that I was coming across in Asia really valued physical appearance, and they admired my nose because they all had the same nose, and they wanted to be different. They wanted to stand out in terms of the area that they value most. Whereas I didn't have the value on physical appearance. Yes, I had a value on health and I wanted to be healthy, but physical appearance didn't value. So I didn't really want to stand out there. But as you know, I do want to stand out in health. Hence why I share lots of podcasts and I do lots of reels and lots of social media, because I have a message to share, because it's an area that I value a lot. So, but getting back to my physical feature of this nose, I thought, wow, so in Australia, it's ugly and it's not desired, and it's probably because there's plenty of big noses. There's lots of Greek, and I often got referred to, do you have a Greek background, or some ethnicity that had a larger nose? And I'm thinking, no, I don't really. I just have a large nose. I don't know where it comes from. But so in terms of these physical traits, I then realized it's in the eye of the beholder. So some people in Australia think it's ugly and say how ugly it is to have this really large nose. But in other parts of the world, it's an admirable trait. And so what I realized from this lesson of when I traveled was, in the eye of the beholder. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And it's based on what that person values. And from my point of view, I just didn't want to stand out in terms of physical features and get teased about something that I didn't really value. I don't mind getting teased about health because I have a high value on it. And I'm on a mission around getting this message out around enhancing and enlightening the well-being of others. So this podcast is all about you, and I really want to improve your health and well-being. So I also want you to see yourself as whole and to recognize the perception you have that you're distorting, and you essentially looking at a trait in the other person that you admire, such as their abs, and you're looking at yourself and thinking, I don't have that. There's something missing. But you have a beautiful feature about you that you're just not owning. The abs that are adorable to you, there'd be something about your body that is absolutely adorable. It's just not in the form of abs. It's in the form that you value more. So if you value your booty, your butt, more than your abs, then your butt is going to look better than your abs. It's because we put our attention and our focus to areas that we value most. I didn't value physical appearance, and hence I didn't go and get a nose job because it wasn't a high value to me. But I value my health, and so I constantly work and focus on developing my health. So I realized that why worry about a large nose when some people think it's admirable and then others don't think it is. And then I'm thinking, well, it depends on who you meet. And so I let go of the nose. I thought, well, yeah, it's the same as hair quality, the hair. So I also, when I was traveling around Asia, I was hanging out with a guy called Julian, and he had blonde hair. And because the Asians didn't have blonde hair, they had more darker hair. They really admired the blonde hair. If you value physical appearances, because that would make you stand out. So he was very attractive to all the Asians, and it was because of his blonde hair. And so he had something that they admired in him that they thought were missing in them, or they just wanted to stand out in the area that they valued most. And so then I figured, well, yes, definitely in the eye of the beholder. because back in Australia, there's plenty of blonde hairs and you don't stand out with blonde hair. You need to look at other ways to stand out if you value physical appearance. So in terms of where I'm going with this message is that we need to own the trait that we're admiring in others within us. And we need to find it in the form that we value most. So for me, if I'm admiring someone's physical appearance, I don't have a high value on physical appearance, but I have a high value on health. So I have that quality that I admire in them, but in the form that is most valuable to me, which is health. So there's no point of me admiring a feature of their physical appearance, but I can, in the sense that those abs would have taken a lot of work to build. Whereas my health and the areas of health that I value is more that feeling, that well-being, that feeling that everything's in synchrony and that I'm feeling energized. So vitality is probably, my strong measure of health. Whereas some people's measure of health is their physical appearance, how toned they look. And if they don't look toned, then they don't feel healthy. Whereas mine's less about the toning, it's more about my energy levels. Hence why I have so much energy, because I put a lot of attention and focus on my energy and how can I create more energy, which I'm doing at the moment through my mitochondria renovation, which I've shared on a previous episode. So what I need to do, if I'm admiring someone's abs, I need to look within myself in terms of the form I value is where I'm going to find that admirational trait, which is, as I said, in my health, but in the form of vitality, not in toned abs or ripped abs. It's in vitality. So that's where I'm putting my energy, my focus, my attention, hence why I have high vitality. So I have that quality that I admire in them, but it's in a different form. It's in the form that I value most, as I said, is vitality, not in the physical appearance. And so this is what you need to do if you're admiring someone's booty, you like their booty, it's what do you value? Look within yourself in terms of what's of high value to you. What do you spend time doing that no one needs to remind you to do? So no one needs to remind me to go and do things that are going to increase my vitality, such as I woke up this morning with sunrise and I went out and did some grounding and some energizing with the morning sun to lift my vitality. I then subsequently later on in the morning went for an ocean swim to further boost my vitality. And so I'm constantly doing things to boost my vitality. However, around the booty side of things, I'm not doing lunges. I'm not doing squats. I'm not doing the things that are going to build my booty because I don't have a high value on my booty. So it's time to own the traits of the greats or the traits that you admire in others, but look within yourself and find it in the form that you value most. So I'll always find it in the vitality area of me. If I admire something in others around physical appearance, it's within me, but in a different form. And so I do have that quality. I do have that work ethic towards optimizing my vitality, like they have the work ethic around optimizing their booty. So we share that. That is common across us. But what we need to take into consideration is that we have a unique hierarchy of values. And so I have nothing missing. I'm doing my actions each day towards what's most important to me, and I feel great about that. The only time I ever feel that something's missing is if I compare myself to someone else with a different set of priorities, right? Now, again, I can still look up to people and think I admire their knowledge in health, and I don't have that health knowledge yet. But remember that a lot of this, like when you do this comparison, is understand where you're coming from, right? So for example, I've been following a lot of Dr. Jack Kruse's work around quantum physics and how that applies to health. And I admire his knowledge and intelligence around his understanding of quantum physics. And I don't have that level of intelligence around quantum physics, but I certainly do have that level of intelligence in other areas, but it's just not in quantum physics. It's a new area that I'm exploring. And over time, I'll increase my knowledge in that area, but he is decades ahead of me in that area. So I'm silly to compare myself to Dr. Jack Cruz in that area that he values most. But I do have that in, say, for example, exercise. I have a high value around exercise. I have a lot of knowledge around exercise and how to do it optimally for my body. So I have a high level of knowledge and expertise in that area, but I'm growing my expertise in quantum physics. And I shouldn't compare myself to someone that's 10 years or decades or more than 10 years ahead of me in that field, because that's stupid because it's not apples to apples comparison. And so this is the other thing that we often distort is we look up to those, which is fine to say, look, that's what I'm striving to be like or more like, or I want to achieve that level of success, but allow yourself time to get there because you're comparing yourself to someone that's been working at it for decades. It's like my sensei at karate. I admire her kicks and her punches and her footwork and everything about what she does in karate, but she's 2.5 decades ahead of me in karate. And so as much as I strive to improve myself every day, I don't expect to be there overnight. I will get there in 2.5 decades. And so it's silly to distort things and think that you should have it straight away. And this is what the animal part of our brain does, is that we distort it and we want it immediately. Because you think about it, if that is a tiger in front of me and I don't know if it's eaten or if it's starving and it's seen me, right? Just assume the worst case scenario, then I need to distort the worst case scenario is that I'm going to die and really die hard and it's going to be a terrible death so that I can prepare myself for the worst case scenario. And I need to do it now. And this is what happens is that when we split our consciousness, so that we essentially seeing something in them that we're not owning in ourselves. So we're unconscious of in ourselves, but we're conscious of it in them. We splint our conscious awareness into segments, into parts, and we create this massive void. And then we create this urgency that I want it now. I got to get it now. That's fine when it's a life-threatening situation because I need to distort it. I need to distort the worst case scenario and I need to get the outcome now. I need to force the outcome now. Otherwise, I'm not going to live. And you can see why we have this mechanism within us to really create this urgency. However, it distorts reality if we live in that space and we're not allowing ourselves the grace of time to get there. It's okay to set the goal that I want to master my karate, but I need to allow myself the 2.5 decades for that mastery, okay? And that's a realistic goal. Whereas what is not an unrealistic goal is that I want that now. It's not going to happen now. I'm not setting a realistic goal. I'm actually setting a fantasy of having it now. And this is what happens when we're in amygdala or our animal center, is that we create these fantasies and we distort everything. We distort space and we distort time. And we actually age ourselves in the process because it's stressful. We're thinking, well, why aren't I like this now? There's something missing. I want to be like that right now. Well, you can be if you look in the right areas in terms of, okay, if I admire that quality of mastery in someone else, where do I have that quality of mastery in my life? And it be in the area that I value, which is health. I have that quality. Like I've been working at my health for 2.5 decades. So I have that level of mastery. And I'm sure people look up to me around my level of mastery in terms of my vitality. It's amazing, but I've been working at it for decades. And it'd be silly for someone that's just starting on their health bandwagon to compare themselves to me and then distort that they're not good and they're terrible and they're, why aren't they like Anthony after doing Anthony's routine in one day? They should become like Anthony straight away. But that's a fantasy. That's not reality. The reality of it is that I've been working at it for 2.5 decades to create this level of vitality that I have and I appreciate in myself today. I feel youthful. It's just as like I did in my teens and my 20s because I've been working at it for decades and I continue to work at it, and it's a never-ending project. It never stops. And so for someone that doesn't have vitality, it's absolutely silly to compare themselves to me and say, I want Anthony's vitality. Well, they have that quality that they admire in them already in the area that they value most. So it could be in their business success. So they might think, I'm low on vitality in terms of how I'm comparing myself to Anthony, but hey, where do you have mastery in your life? It's in the area that you value most. And if this person valued business, then they should admire what they've achieved in business. So it's really important that we set goals and aspirations in the area that we value. There's no point of me setting goals around physical appearance because I don't have a high value towards it. I don't value having six packs and big bulging muscles. It's not a value of mine. So why compare myself to someone who's got a six pack and bulging muscles and think that there's something missing in me and I don't have that quality? Yes, I have that quality. I have that quality of mastery in a particular area, but it's in the area of health and in particular in the area of vitality. And I own that. And I'm thinking, yes, I have that quality that I see in them within me. And I feel whole when I do this balancing of my perception as opposed to distorting it and thinking there's something missing in me. So when you do this distortion and you get into that amygdala and you're thinking that there's something missing, massively missing in you, and that why don't you have it now? How about we start balancing your perceptions and then look in the area that you value most and really own that area that you've been working on and dedicating so much time to, and say, yes, this is the area I have admiration for that I see in this other person that I perceive is missing in me, but it's not missing in me. It's just in a different form. It's in the area that I value more. So I hope that really helps in terms of you not distorting yourself in terms of what you're seeing on social media. If you're constantly scrolling through feed and you're seeing these images that are making you upset and you feel that there's something missing in you, it's probably, if it's not making you feel great and you're not balancing your perceptions over it and you can't look at it without looking and feeling bad about yourself, maybe delete that account, maybe stop following that person. But a better way of doing it is, rather than running away from the problem, is seeing it and owning it within yourself. So yes, you have a quality that you admire in them, but now look within and think, what is of high value to me? It could be your family. And then, yes, you have mastery in the sense of your family, in terms of where you want your family to be. You've been putting all your energy into creating a beautiful family unit with vibrant children and a vibrant relationship. That's where you've been putting all your energy. So own it. Say, yes, I have that quality that I admire in them, but it's in the form that I value most. And then you feel whole. And you know that, well, it's the area I value most. As much as I respect that in them, I see it in myself. It's in a different form. And so it's not creating this feeling that there's always something missing within you. You have it within you. It's just in the form that you're not honoring. So own it in yourself. And then you won't have this distorted view of what you're watching or seeing on social media. It won't be distorted anymore because you're owning that quality in you. And you're thinking, yes, well done for putting all that time and dedication and mastery into that area that you value most. And you can see that you have what you admire in them within you, but it's just in a different form. It's in the form that you value more. So I'm really hoping that way of seeing things in a balanced way as opposed to a distorted way, in order to know whether you're distorting things. And if you feel bad, if you create any sort of feeling bad about yourself, that is that you're slipping into that lower part of your brain, which is the amygdala, that limbic center, the emotional center, because you've got this lower level of emotion emerging. And that is where you're perceiving something is missing. But what you can do in the moment is transcend your thinking into the prefrontal cortex by looking at what you perceive is missing and finding it in yourself in the form that you value more. And then when you do that, you will balance your perception of what you're seeing and you'll see reality. You'll start thinking, yes, they're achieving great success in the area that they value most, but you're also achieving great success in the area that you value most. And that's what you're here on earth to do, is to work on the areas that you value most, because that's where you'll have a voice. That's where you'll have leadership qualities, and that's where you'll stand out. As I said, I didn't like standing out in terms of physical appearances. I realize now, because I didn't have a value on it. But I love standing out, and I love having a voice in terms of health, and in particularly around vitality and holistic health. I love sharing my knowledge. I don't mind standing out. I don't mind getting criticized for what I might say around holistic health, because it's in an area that I value most, and I'm willing to accept the challenges that confront me because it's such a high value to me. Whereas if I were to then chase physical appearances, then I don't think I'll do 4 hours in the gym working on my abs, because I just don't think it's worth it, because I don't have a high value on it. So I'm just not going to do it, and I'm never going to have these ripped and bulging abs. So again, it's best to acknowledge your superpowers and stay focused and oriented on your superpowers, and not get dragged down into other people's values and thinking that just because you haven't achieved the success that they have in that area, that there's something missing in you. There's nothing missing in you. You just have a different set of priorities, a different set of values, and in terms of what's important to you. And that's where you put your time and energy, and that is where you achieve success. So I just want to send you love in this message, that there's nothing missing in you. You are complete. You are not fragmented. You are not dismembered. You are not split into parts. You are a whole person. The only thing that splits you into parts is this bias that you have when you slip into the amygdala part of your brain and distort reality and create this illusion, and then create fantasies and nightmares around this distorted view of reality. But you can get back to reality by balancing your perceptions and seeing that, yes, you have a counterbalance to what you admire in them. There is that admirable trait in you that you're taking for granted, that you're not being grateful for. So be grateful for it, own it, love it, and then you'll feel whole, knowing that you're on mission, working on things that are most important to you, and you're not going to slip into things that are least important to you, because you are owning what is most important to you, and you realize and you're grateful for the success you're having in that area that's most important to you. So I hope this was of value today. Please share it with others that you know that may have this body dysphoria disorder, BDD. 20% of young people have it, and I'm sure there's a portion, and maybe it's a smaller portion, of people that aren't young, but I consider myself as young. So it really comes down to, in terms of what you see as being young or old, but in terms of it's what they're referring to in the article is more that Gen Z and millennials. So I think the X's are probably not spending quite as much time on social media, or don't spend, or they're probably wise enough to realize that it's futile comparing yourself to others that have a different set of values. Maybe it's the wisdom of the Gen X's and Y's and baby boomers that the reason why they don't have this BDD as bad as the younger people. And you got to remember, the younger people are still developing their prefrontal cortex. So they do probably spend more time in that survival area of thinking, and they're probably more susceptible to have this comparison. So that's probably something that is going to be really valuable to them, is sharing it with younger people to really help them balance their perceptions around the way they see themselves, and to own their superpowers within them. And it's futile comparing their superpowers to someone else's superpowers in an area that they don't value, just like I didn't value my physical looks. So that's it for today. Please share it with others that could take value from today's episode. And if you like this, please follow this episode. Please, if by following it, you'll get reminders sent to you that there's a new episode. There's an episode dropping every Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and it's on holistic health. I've got lots of great episodes coming up this year, particularly around the area of quantum physics and how it relates to health, and how you can really improve your health by adopting these quantum principles. So Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate your ears, and value your superpowers, or honor your superpowers, and be grateful for having those superpowers, and continue to work on those superpowers, and continue to lead in this area of your superpower, and continue to have a voice in the area that's most important to you. So thank you. Have a great day, week, and year. Until next time, take care. Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand me&my Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. me&my Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you made to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, me&my Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast, and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages, or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of me&my Health Up.